Thank you for joining the first episode of the Prince George's Choice Podcast for students in schools. My name is Delvin Champagne. I'm the president of the Prince George's County Parents Alliance for Education Options in School Choice. We are an advocacy organization where we advocate and we educate. We just educate communities and families, specifically in Prince George's County, but throughout the whole DMV area, from DC, Baltimore, Montgomery, Howard, Northern Virginia, about all of the available options for schools for our children. I would like to welcome you to this first podcast. And we have a great guest today, a good friend of mine. His name is Mr. Leroy Nesbitt. He is the executive director of the Black Student Fund. And we're going to get to his message in just a few moments, but we want to just give a brief history on the history of school choice. School choice is a very controversial topic in the world of education. We believe that school choice is the civil rights issue of this time and the social justice. School choice actually started during Reconstruction, during the time when African Americans were freed from slavery, and the Freedmen's Bureau provided funds for African Americans to attain education. And so since Reconstruction through Jim Crow, African Americans have always started schools, be it a church and a pastor and his wife starting a school at the church. That's been the history of African American education. HBCUs were started by churches and K-12 education. And fast forward a little bit from Reconstruction through to civil rights. A great activist, a researcher, a fellow Howard alumni. His name is Dr. Kenneth Clark. You may know him, who did the black-white doll study at Columbia University when he did his graduate work. But he wrote an essay that talked about, in 1968, that talked about the need for educating African-American youth in alternative settings outside of these traditional public school. And I can put that on our site for you to review. That's the 1960s, 1970s. We have Mrs. Marva Collins in Chicago, Illinois. She is also a HBCU graduate of Clark Atlanta University. Marva Collins was an educator in the Chicago, Illinois public school, in the Chicago public school system. And she was just, unsettled, unhappy with the quality of education for low-income Black students. And she resigned for her job, and she started a private school in her living room to educate low-income kids in the Cabrini Green housing projects in Chicago, Illinois. That's the 1970s. 1980s, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Say her name. Her name is Representative Annette Polly Williams. Polly Williams was a representative in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She was a founding board member of the National Black Caucus of state legislatures. She was the chaplain and she was the treasurer. And Annette Polly Williams was a single Black mother legislator who loved her community, and with record funding, partnered with a good mentor, Dr. Howard Fuller, who was at the time, the superintendent of the Milwaukee Public Schools. They said with record funding, record love, record programming, record investment in the public schools, they could not move test scores, math and reading proficiency. So she said, because I love them and because of social justice and civil rights, she offered parents the first voucher program to attend a local church school or independent school if they choose to. And that program is still active to this day, and it's funded for 30 years. And also, in 1990s, the American Federation of Teachers Union, Randy Weingard's boss, former mentor, his name is Albert Schenker. Albert Schenker, the president of the American Federation of Teachers Unions, wrote the first charter school law. Yes, I know it's very controversial, charter schools, but that's where it came from. Teachers unions wrote the charter school bill for the first charter school law, the AFT, the American Federation of Teachers. And so, in moving to modern times, in DC in 2003, her name is Virginia Walden Ford. A movie was just made about her just last year called The Miss Virginia, about a single Black mother in DC, Ward 7 and 8, advocating for better school opportunities for her children. She advocated to then establish what is still now known as the DC Opportunity Scholarship Program for low-income students. And that is administered by Serving Our Children nonprofit in DC. And so that's the history of school choice. I know it's controversial, and we talk about, conservatism and free markets, but actually school choice was actually started out of civil rights and social justice, not privatization. And so that's just giving some information on the history of where we are. And so because I went to HBCUs, two-time HBCU graduate, Norfolk State and Howard University Graduate School, we have to put everything in a historical context. And so moving forward, I would like to introduce our first guest of the PGDMV School Choice Podcast. His name is Mr. Leroy Nesbitt, attorney. He's a fellow Howard alumni from the law school side. And I'm just happy to hear that he's here to share his views about school choice and in DC and the Black Student Fund and on the history. It's been 50 years that's been in existence. And so without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest, Mr. Leroy Nesbitt. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Delvin, and thank you for your work. The creation of opportunities for children, particularly children of color, and particularly children of color in the Washington, D.C. area, has been fueled and created not by schools, but by parents. And you are in that tradition, my friend, of a parent who has decided that they can influence opportunities not only for their child, but for other children. I indeed am the executive director of the Black Student Fund, and I too am, as you mentioned, a Howard grad, and I'm proud to say that I'm married to a graduate of Howard Dental School, and I'm proud to say that I am the father of a graduate of Howard undergrad, the business school, and I'm also proud to say that I, in an earlier part of my life's career journey, was an attorney at Howard University, working out of the administration building. So yes, when you say HU, I'm definitely going to say you know.
You know.
You know. So, but let me return back to what I was saying about the work of parents in this community. And it really is significant, and it's something I'll come back to, but I'll tell you to foreshadow my remarks that there is a return, like the 60s, to parent initiatives to support children in independent education. And we'll talk about that in a second to talk a little bit about my organization, which too was started as a parents group. And it's a simple story. A group of parents at DC schools, independent schools, decided, and this was an integrated group of parents, Black and white parents, decided that the spirit of Brown versus education was not being practiced at the independent schools in the 1960s in the Washington, D.C. area. So they decided that they were going to do something about that. They decided that they were going to start their own organization. And so these parents got together and started something called the Negro Student Fund. We've changed our name since then. But what they simply wanted to do was to help place some African American kids in independent schools. But they truly believed that it wasn't only about the kids that they were providing some financial support for. They believed very deeply that all students would benefit in an integrated classroom. So they were ahead of their time in that they were not just thinking about inclusion, but they were thinking about diversity. So they created the Black Student Fund. We're one of the oldest in the country of our type. We're not the only one. But we are been active for over 50 years trying to create space in independent education. We can boast, 90% kids going to college for the last 20 years, and 1/3 of the students that have gone through this program, who are pretty much exclusively African American, are graduates not only of a college, but also of a graduate or professional program. They've had impact. They are professors, they are pioneers, they are people of purpose, they are educators, and they're people who have deep impact on the immediate DMV community, but also the larger America. But I want to return again to this piece about parents. We serve to facilitate and create opportunity for folks. We are proud of the fact that we've helped lots of families, lots of children. We're proud of the fact that we've had impact on the development of diversity and inclusion in independent schools. But I sometimes take particular pride these days in our ability to support community, ability to support and encourage people who are in the community creating opportunity. The independent schools provide opportunity. Being independent, they have the ability to determine who gets hired, who gets admitted, and what their curriculum looks like. And in doing so, there is a space created for parents and families to have a big say in what goes on in those environments. Yet again, things don't always turn out or are not always as good as people would like them to be. So they take action to make change. In that independent school space, there is a big space for families of color to make change. As I told you before, the Black Student Fund was founded in that spirit. And Delvin's work in Prince George's County is in that spirit. But there are 3 or 4 pop-up organizations that we support. One is called Connect DMV. Another is called EduKeys. So there is a lot going on that parents could do to have impact on opportunity in independent schools. So I want to applaud you, Delvin, in giving a history. And in giving that history, being able to identify that many of the people who have made change are parents or teachers.
Right.
Because those are oftentimes where the change comes from that particularly benefits children of color in education.
Absolutely.
I also want, before I kick it back to you, Delvin, I also want to talk a little bit about excellence of color, Black excellence,
Absolutely.
Latinx excellence.
Absolutely.
We're an organization that does that. While continuing to support all families and do all that we can to support education, we have a niche. And our niche are kids who are dedicated to hard work. Our niche are kids who have academic talent. Our niche are kids who have high aspirations for what they want in terms of their educational experience. And so I'm here on a daily basis to tell you about the good news. Today I'm here to tell you about how many families of color are thriving despite the challenges of virtual learning in their school environments. We have a generation of young people, and all of us know this, so I'm stating the obvious, who, maybe all of those times that they were on those phones that we were upset about and saying, why don't you get off your phone? You're on the phone all the time.
Yeah.
Maybe that button pushing savvy is coming in handy now.
Yes.
Almost a daily basis, I'm talking to families and I'm asking about the virtual learning experiences. And families are, many families in the Washington, D.C. area are figuring that out. It's a struggle. It ain't easy. But a lot of things that are worthwhile ain't easy.
Yes, sir.
So I'm here to tell you that this summer, for example, we ran a coding program and a math program. We were planning to have an in-person program, and we had to do like everybody else and pivot.
Right.
And I could not believe how well our students in the program pivoted. We served over 30 students who were mentored by college students of color from universities across this country. We had about 6 of them, including some HBCUs. I won't name them, but including some HBCUs.
Good, good.
Our students this summer did over 30,000 math practice problems. These are 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, maybe some 5th graders too. I don't remember all of them. But I can tell you that they were online from basically 10 to 2.
Okay.
There were of course some breaks and some lunchtime and some downtime, but they were on for every morning for an hour with instruction in math and then math quizzing. And then in the afternoon, they received instruction in coding. Coding instruction came actually from computer science students in an HBCU.
Right.
So I was like, woo, I don't know that I can sit down and try to do any kind of learning in front of a camera or in front of a computer screen for 3 or 4 hours. But
Yeah.
we had kids who were online ready to go at 10 o'clock every morning.
Right.
That's good news.
Right.
That's evidence of how people are adapting and
Right.
pivoting themselves to continue to advance their education.
Absolutely.
And I was thinking to myself, wow, some of, kind of the adult perspective. These kids in a normal year may have been outside running around or doing something else, but they were learning,
Yeah, absolutely.
reinforcing math skills, learning coding, learning a little bit about creative, and doing some stuff with social emotional learning.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's one story I can tell,
Okay.
but there are many other stories, including the shift that I see in the curriculum development of kids of color in independent schools.
Absolutely.
I see now 10th graders and 11th graders and 12th graders who are doing some stuff different than what I did in high school. I liked history myself, Delvin, when I was in high school. And I see a whole bunch of STEM kids who are doing calculus in 11th and 12th grade.
Right.
And on top of the calculus, they're doing coding.
Absolutely.
I have 8th graders who build websites.
Right.
I have 6th graders who are learning about cybersecurity.
Absolutely.
There is a shift. And I'm watching this curriculum shift and I'm asking, are our kids of color, kids who aren't necessarily from households with the highest level of technology or technology access,
Right.
how are they faring?
Absolutely.
And I'm seeing some soaring stars in this area.
It's
It's unsettling sometimes, Delvin, because they start talking about stuff I don't even know anything about.
absolutely. I can talk about it because I'm living that life here. My son is a Prince George's County Public School student. He goes to a specialty magnet school, Durham Canadian French immersion, and learning French. The whole curriculum is in French, and so it's very difficult. All the classes. So we have to help translate and Google Translate, trying to help him navigate his work. But it's a great it's a good ride. And so let's get right into the briefly about the fair tomorrow. Tell us about the fair tomorrow.
Well, oh my gosh, there's so much to tell. For more than 40 years, the Black Student Fund has sponsored an event called the School Fair. Yeah. We do this event with the Latino Student Fund. Okay. Yeah. Every year, not this year, but normally, we're at the DC Convention Center. We have thousands of people who come down on a Sunday between 2 and 5 and stop at tables to learn about independent schools. We normally have 60 to 70 schools represented. Absolutely. It's kind of like a college fair. Right. It's a big room with a bunch of tables and representatives from the schools that include admissions people, financial aid people,
Right.
families, teachers, etc. Well, we can't do that this year because of
Right.
COVID.
COVID, right.
So COVID dealt us lemons. So we did what? We made
Make
lemonade.
lemonade. Yes, sir.
That's right. So what we decided to do was to go to get a platform and have a virtual school fair. It is tomorrow,
Yeah.
Sunday, October 11th at 2 p.m. You
Great.
can register at access.blackstudentfund, excuse me, accessbsf.blackstudentfund.org. Or
Absolutely.
you can just Google accessbsf.org, or you can just Google Black Student Fund, Latino Student Fund School Fair. Um, and the fair will feature a platform of 50 plus schools.
Right.
Each school will have a digital virtual booth.
Right.
In that digital virtual booth, visitors can watch video on the school, visitors can read information and review PowerPoints, but most importantly, visitors can click a button and connect live with representatives from that school.
That's great. That's
So
awesome.
it's an awesome package. It's first class. I wanna give a shout out, Delvin, to Next Tech R Next Tech AR, which is
Next.
the company out of Canada
Okay.
that is building all of this for us.
Okay.
Now, it doesn't just end with the exhibit booths.
Right.
We are at 3 o'clock, and at 4 o'clock we are live streaming.
Okay.
Remember, Delvin, I told you about those parent groups that continue to come up, parents of color
Right.
who are involved in issues in independent schools?
Right.
Well, we're giving those groups opportunities to tell their stories and to do their work.
Right.
Connect DMV, I mentioned before, that's
Absolutely.
supporting Black and Latino kids in independent schools, will have a presentation. And EduKeys, led by a powerful sister named Jules Samuels,
Yeah.
is a parent of independent schools. She will be talking to help families figure out how to complete the admissions and financial aid process.
Yeah.
And the wonderful and prominent Dr. Rona Frederick,
Yeah.
professor at Catholic University, tenured professor in the education department, will be presenting and giving tips on how to match up your child with the right kind of school, independent or public. But
Right.
that's particularly important for independent schools because there's so many different types of independent schools and styles.
Absolutely.
So she talks about an assessment. And then we have Dr. Linda McGee, a former who had her child in independent schools, who's a lawyer and a psychologist who does the independent school testing and specializes in counseling families of children in independent schools. She
Absolutely.
will also have a live podcast. But we're not done, Delvin. I got more.
You got more?
At
Oh no,
5
I'm ready.
the booths, the digital booths will be open from 2 to 5. But at 5 o'clock, we got more.
More.
We'll have presentations at 5 o'clock. We'll
Okay.
have Dr. Annie Neal, who is one of the premier math and STEM tutors with a large clientele in independent schools, an African American man, another Howard graduate.
HU.
Dr. Eddie Neal will talk about STEM and math learning and share what he knows. We'll also have something from Miss Erica Roberts, one of our supporters, who's going to talk about the new after school. With everybody being locked up, what happens between 2 and 7 every day?
Yeah. No.
Kids would be out doing athletics, other things. They're at home online. How do we talk about the kind of enrichment activities that they should have during 2 to 7?
That's
So
cool.
she'll be here. And then, Delvin, many of your supporters and listeners will have children who have special needs.
Right.
We're going to have a panel on special needs. And
Excellent.
when we talk about that, we're talking about kids who need different learning kind of style things.
Absolutely.
So it's a variety of kids, not just students that we've thought about as having to need an IEP.
Right.
So that's part of it. We also have prizes. If you come on to the Black Student Fund exhibit booth, you can be eligible for stuff from Ben's Jelly Bowl, Pinky's Eats, one of my favorites over in Southeast Washington. We also have stuff from Ravenhook Bakehouse. We have some books. Dr. Frederick's book, we'll be giving away some of those. So come to our booth to be eligible for the prizes.
Absolutely.
So it's a big event with lots of activities.
Sounds good. Now specifically tying it to Prince George's County. Can you give a few minutes about the work you're doing in Prince George's County? in Maryland with the partnering with the Archdiocese, who I should note, the Archdiocese of Washington provides the community serve provides the the Archdiocese of Washington Catholic Charities provides the community schools wraparound social services for all of the Prince George's County public schools. So that should be noted that that they do that. So there's a partnership with the public schools in the Archdiocese. But what are you doing with in Maryland and Prince George's County, partnering with the Boost Scholarship program and some of the schools you work with, like DeMatha and Bishop McNamara and Elizabeth Seton, some of those schools, to provide low-income kids the opportunity to have a educational option?
Well, I'm glad you brought up the county.
Yeah,
I'm a child who grew up in this area, so I understand and appreciate the contribution and richness of the county. And let me start by saying that the residents of the county are big supporters of the Black Student Fund.
absolutely.
More than 40, almost 40% of the students who are in our program live in the county.
Absolutely.
And every year, more than 35% of the attendees at the school fair come from the county.
Absolutely.
Some years it's close to 50% of the people who participate in the school fair come from the county.
True.
The other thing is back to our theme about the parents and their impact on independent education.
Right.
Both of the organizations that I mentioned to you, EduKeys, founded by Jewel Samuels, and Connect DMV, have strong roots in the county.
Absolutely.
So yes, there's a lot of work to be done. Now, I wanted to point out that the Archdiocese of Washington will have a booth at the Black Student Fund School Fair. So they will be represented. Now, we also we've been, thanks to you, Delvin, they've been made aware of, knowledgeable, and supportive of independent school funding issues, independent school choice issues in the county related to funding.
Right.
I'm talking about Boost.
Right. Absolutely.
So thanks to you and others, Maryland Catholic Charities and Maryland Cape, I've been able to be informed and supportive. And I am, because paying for independent schools is probably the greatest obstacle for families of color in this area.
Right.
So I think we want to be supportive in a couple of ways. Number one is we first are an organization promoting opportunity.
Right.
And these monies, these programs are a light of opportunity. Not everybody may be funded or benefit directly from these programs.
Right.
But these programs open the doors for people to think about and find their way to independent education. And maybe you don't get funding from here, but maybe you apply to a school and you get financial aid.
Right.
Because millions of dollars are being spent by the independent education institutions in this area, schools that are both connected with denominations like the Catholic or Episcopal Church, and schools that are independent of those denominations. But there's millions of dollars being spent on kids of color for scholarships and financial aid for independent education just in our area.
Absolutely.
So I want to be supportive of the programs that provide those fundings. You mentioned Serving Our Children in DC, for example, so that people know about them and access them.
Absolutely.
Secondly, I think there needs to be an expanded discussion. I'm not sure I know enough about anything to talk about how we can help yet. So I'm doing a lot of listening. But there has to be a form and expanded conversation about the teaching folks how to pay for independent education and talking about how resources can be developed for that. For example, whatever public funds that are made available for families to attend independent schools, we need to find a way to get public match money.
Right. Absolutely.
So I'm particularly interested in how spending public monies can be used to inspire private giving. And I think that's a role that we have been an advocate for. We do provide a small scholarship, a couple $100 a year for kids But it's not just about people giving us money to give to financial aid. It's
Right.
also about the creation of community pools.
Right.
I don't know whether those pools have connections to religious institutions or to foundations or to old-fashioned community chests
Right.
that will be set up for kids to benefit based upon a geographic region. But the schools are going to need, in addition to their financial aid, um, private funding, individual, foundation, entity, corporate funding to help do this. If you look at, for example, think about it this way. We tell children, if you get through high school, we'll find a way to get you to college. We tell them that as a society.
Right.
A lot of that is built off a whole bunch of scholarships. Greek letter organizations,
Absolutely.
churches and others have scholarships for kids to go to college.
Right.
But when it comes to those kinds of scholarships or financial aid for independent school, there's very little in the community.
Right.
Uh, I think that it's time for a conversation that can encourage more businesses and more others to set up a fund that is to be used for kids to go to independent schools.
Absolutely.
That's part of the school choice, and we want to be part of the advocacy of encouraging people to support creation of opportunities by creating funding opportunities. So I'll leave the legislative lobbying to those larger than I,
right.
but I do stand with them in advancing the issue.
Right.
I do stand with them in getting a public debate, and I do stand with them in providing the evidence that this is public monies
Right.
well spent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, we're almost going to wrap up shortly. I just wanted to say that that the Black Student Fund, based in Washington, that serves the whole DMV area, also gave birth to several of the programs in Maryland. The BASS, which is the Baltimore Education Scholarship Fund, a trust, and also the Children's Fund Baltimore. I forgot the acronym, but we have two smaller similar programs in Maryland that are birthed out of the Black Student Fund. And so that's a good history and a legacy that you have also in Maryland. But just to wrap it up, any closing points you want to make about work you're doing, the community, and as a whole, how can we just promote opportunities for children? I think advocacy is very important. I think that we need to, this shouldn't be a political, football about kids' lives. Here in Maryland, Prince George's County, our motto for the PG Parents Alliance for Education Options, our motto is we do like what Malcolm X said. We educate kids by any means necessary. If you have if your district public school is working good for you, let's get you there and help you make that better. If you want another option, if there's a charter school, independent school, want to learn about homeschool, now we have pods. However a child can learn and develop and be productive in society is an investment. You know why? It's all about economics, because here in Maryland, the per pupil spending on average is about $15,000, $15,000 or $16,000. In Maryland, the Boost Scholarship Program, on average, about $5,000. And so to invest in Boost at $5,000, the system that funds public education saves $10,000, and it reduces the class size. So you have a reduced class size and you save $10,000 per student to reinvest in other kids. So that's a good deal. To me, that's basic economics. And also, if you invested Boost for 13 years, Boost is $5,000, say K through 12, hypothetically. That's what? $65,000. Do you know what the cost is for 1 year of juvenile detention
No, what's the cost?
In Maryland, it's $69,000 for 1 year of juvenile delinquency detention in Maryland. 69,000 for 1 year. So you can educate a child in the school, if a parent so choose, using a boost scholarship for 13 years less than 1 year of juvenile delinquency right now in the budget. So it's economics. It's a basic, you save money, reduce the public school class size, and also you have more money to invest. And so it's good economics. It's good for students. It creates you know, different diverse environments. I look at school choice like how we advocate for HUD vouchers, HUD Section 8 vouchers, which is for mixed use housing. I call it mixed use education because we want to integrate low income kids with more affluent kids because that helps them, you know, rising tides lift all boats. And so I think that that's the issue we have. Some of our schools are high farm, which we say in Maryland is called free and reduced meals. Farm students who are low income, you know, sometimes it's difficult to produce academic outcomes and math reading proficiency, and you have high farm population. That's just kind of basic. That's just data. Like that's just how Department of Education data shows that high low income student populations is harder to achieve those goals because they have less money to invest in enrichment programs and tutors and single parent households, and you know, so it's like a lot of domestic issues and you know issues that and social issues that impact education. And so we want kids to just learn to be able to have the best opportunity possible. We want to take them off of the pre-K to prison pipeline and on a path through college and career readiness. That's what we want to do because we want to help these young people be able to be productive and to be able to be leaders in our community. And so I want to just say that thank you for joining the call. I mean, my first podcast, our first meeting. It's been great having you on the call on this first video podcast. And we want to just share that our next podcast for November will be on the Prince George's County Public School Specialty School Lottery Program and Charter School Enrollment, which opens up in January. And so we want to make sure that we get that information out as soon as possible for the next year for the lottery process for Prince George's County Public Schools to enroll in magnet school, specialty programs, tag programs, science and tech, language immersion, talented arts. What is it? It's called arts and performing arts programs. And so we want to make sure that information is out so parents can be informed so they can make decisions on enrollment for their kids. So you got another minute? Any last words?
Just a couple. First of all, thank you for having me. Second of all, yes, the Black Student Fund School Fair is tomorrow, October 11th. Third, even after the fair is over, visit us at Access BSF. Yes. Access BSF. I finally want to conclude, but you talked about something that reminded me. I want to call the name of Barbara Patterson,
okay,
who was the executive director of this organization for more than 25 years. A very dynamic, aggressive, assertive woman who passed just a short time ago, but ran this organization and built this organization into what it was. Okay. And she was kind of one of those pioneers too. And she too, as I close, was one of those parents.
Absolutely.
Who wanted something better for her children and children she knew.
Absolutely. And so with that, we're going to conclude and we're going to go one more time with the outro sound. And so here we go. Where's my sound? Make sure I don't miss this. This is our theme music here. So we should make sure we don't miss this. Here we go.
Nice to go out with a beat.
All right. Well, I look forward to talking to you soon, and have a great day. See you tomorrow.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Have a great day.